Hank Hill, the honest, hard-working family man representing Middle America, plastered on televisions across the world. Many fans, and even some who have never seen the show, think of Hank's strong moral principles and integrity whenever they remember the character. Hank's strong commitment to his way of life was a big focus of the show. While the point of this was to show the life of a man who didn't appreciate the change he saw in the world, this also carried over to his other character traits, such as honesty and loyalty. People should remember the character of Hank as the representation of a good man. That's what he was. He treated his family well and tried to do his best for everyone. While he made mistakes, he genuinely wanted the best for those around him, and was willing to make sacrifices to get to that point. But it wasn't always like that. Hank Hill's character developed a lot from earlier seasons. As the show started to cover heavier topics, we got to see Hank's development in those situations, and everything seemingly stuck with him from there. In the earlier seasons, Hank was written more immaturely. He was almost a deadbeat, stupid, childlike father figure, like the ones portrayed by nearly every single cartoon show. How did this character narrowly avoid that fate? I'm EliTried, and I'm here to lay everything out. Season 1 was probably the most experimental season of the show, as it is for most shows. While there are notable exceptions, it's a general rule that the shows usually reshape a little after the first season. Most of these changes are minor art style and character changes, but the premise of the show usually stays the same. This was the case for King of the Hill. The show has always been about Hank's experiences as a family man and his views on the always changing world he was living in. In Season 1, Hank's reactions to the changes were mostly similar at face value: stress, irritability, and concern. But his behavior was very different. He was more immature, less controlling of his own impulses, and less thoughtful of those he cared about. While most of these episodes ended with Hank recognizing his flaws and making it up to those around him for his mistakes, there are some things he did that he would never do in later seasons. Here's a list of the most notable. In Season 1, Episode 3, The Order of the Straight Arrow, Hank Hill pretends to be asleep while at the wheel to trick Bobby into talking, and comments on and stares at a woman's breasts at an environmental protest. In Season 1, Episode 4, Hank's Got the Willies, Hank refuses to say that he loves his wife more than his guitar. In Season 1, Episode 7, Westy Side Story, Hank completely ignores almost everything said by his new neighbors, acting more ignorantly than he ever would. In Season 1, Episode 8, Shins of the Father, Hank allows his father Cotton to negatively influence his son far further than he would ever allow in later seasons. In Season 1, Episode 9, Peggy the Boggle Champ, Hank yells at his wife to coach her in a similar style to his old high school football coach. And most notably, in Season 1, Episode 10, Keeping Up with Our Joneses, Hank forces Bobby to smoke an entire carton of cigarettes to teach him a lesson about smoking. None of the things Hank did that I listed from Season 1 are things that he would do later in the series, and each for a different reason. Hank wouldn't be looking at and commenting on the skimpy outfitting of the environmental protesters because he is a very modest person, and displays of sexuality, especially in a public setting, embarrass him. He wouldn't coach his wife by yelling at her or refuse to say that he loves her more than his guitar, because he loves his family. But most importantly, he puts in the effort to understand them. He wouldn't pretend to fall asleep while driving to scare his own son as a prank, or make his son smoke an entire carton of cigarettes to teach him a lesson about smoking, because he is the straight man of the series, making wise decisions and correcting the mistakes of others in a safe manner. This isn't to say that Hank is a flawless character past Season 1. In Season 2, Episode 12, Three Coaches and a Bobby, Hank's obsession with going hard on the players of the Junior League football team as the coach drives them all to soccer instead. In Season 3, Episode 6, A Beer Can Called Desire, Hank tackles a gray-haired Don Meredith from behind after he misses a throw for $100,000. In Season 3, Episode 22, Death End Texas, Hank's hesitance to prevent his wife from engaging in a bad situation leads to serious trouble for her. In Season 4, Episode 14, High Anxiety, Hank won't testify to the police in a murder case about his whereabouts at the time of the crime because he is afraid of divulging the information that he was high on marijuana. In Season 5, Episode 9, Chasing Bobby, Hank's refusal to accept that his truck is breaking down causes him to snap at Bobby out of anger. There are several more examples I could refer to, but the examples provided sum up a majority of Hank's character flaws past the first season. Anxiety when confronted about wrongdoing, hesitancy to step in when he needs to, anger, and strong views about the way people should be that are difficult to change. These flaws are all rather standard and possessed by many. While Hank has these flaws, he tends to rise above them when he should. In Season 4, Episode 20, Meet the Propaniacs, Hank is supportive of his son's comedy routines despite the fact that he doesn't see it as a real job. In Season 8, Episode 21, The Redneck on Rainy Street, Hank runs into a stick fight to save his neighbor Con from ruining his life and convinces him to get back on track. And while clearly irritated and under quite a bit of stress, Hank is able to control his anger with his situation of being stuck on a party island in Season 3, Episode 17, Escape from Party Island. Hank is also a leader to his family and his community, willing to go out of the way to stand up for what is right. In Season 4, Episode 22, Flush with Power, Hank Hill applies to be on the board of Zoning and Resources, to reverse their decision to make it illegal to install high-flow toilets after coming to the realization that the head of the committee made the law simply to improve his sales, as he was the owner of the company that made low-flow toilets. Despite all odds being against him, he didn't give up until he got the job done. Many of the instances where the flaws show themselves in Hank Hill are more stressful situations, where the same level of control would be exhibited by the average person. When Hank was being questioned about a murder case, it's reasonable that he would be nervous about divulging the fact that he was high on marijuana at the time. When losing his truck, it's easy to understand why someone in that situation would be stressed out and prone to anger, especially considering the danger of the circumstance, and his emotional attachment to the vehicle he's had for over 20 years. These situations are certainly far more severe than the cases in which Hank would lose his temper in Season 1, and even then his reactions are less harsh, like when he got so mad at Bobby for smoking a cigarette that he made him smoke an entire carton, or when he was irritated and embarrassed that his son Bobby was talking to Willie Nelson, the musician he looked up to. The intense flaws that can be seen in him in Season 1, the same level of stupidity and ignorance possessed by his friends, putting material possessions above his family, being unthoughtful about how others are negatively influencing his son, and overall immaturity, are no longer present after the first season. While Season 1 is very straightforward with the lessons of the stories and the character development made, it wouldn't make sense for his character to change that much between Seasons 1 and 2. A 45-year-old man doesn't change that much in such a short amount of time. The writers of King of the Hill didn't make the conscious choice to develop his character quickly. Instead, changed the character. They made this conscious choice to change his character to better fit the mold they needed him to fill. Rather than having another stereotypical animated father like the dumb Homer Simpson, the abusive Peter Griffin, or the pathetic Jerry Smith, the show chose to have a good functional father figure as well as having him fill the role of the main character. And clearly, they made the right call. King of the Hill picked up traction quickly. Its release in 1997 and following episodes carried the show into being one of the most talked about animated series at the time. The show rose in popularity to the point where it even rivaled The Simpsons in viewership for a brief period. It ran from 1997 to 2010. Amassing 13 seasons and many fans. The show was held in high regard by many, and still today it is considered to be one of the greats, among the ranks of The Simpsons, Futurama, and South Park. The main reason for this is the iconic and good-natured character, Hank Hill. King of the Hill became the sole source of positive and accurate representation of the American Southeast on television, which is why it resonated with so many people as it did. For people in rural communities to see a show that represented their culture, as well as not making fun of them extensively for it, was a fresh change. It tackled social issues while respecting the intelligence of the viewer, and at the center of it all was one of the most stand-up fathers in animated television history. Having Hank Hill, the strong moral character, be the catalyst of the social commentary the show brought up is really what cemented it in so many people's hearts. By delegating the stereotypes to characters like Dale Gribble and Boomhauer, while having a character like Hank driving the story, it made the Southern audience know that they were laughing with the writers instead of being laughed at. The show wouldn't have linked with the audience as well as it did if Hank was the same childlike, simple-minded character that they made him in Season 1. That's why Hank Hill went from simple to complex. Thanks for watching. If you like Futurama, you'll want to check out this video next. Have a great day.